Hello together and welcome to my channel. So today I want to talk about illusions and how they can be kind of used like a drug. But not in order to use them as a drug, but in order to maybe stop using them as a drug. And this idea occurred to me a couple of days ago while I was on a 3-day survival training. So this was like a 3-day tour that should go into the wilderness without any equipment and learn how to survive there. And you noticed I said should because the tour actually was quite a fraud. I'm really not happy with the provider. And I will make a review of the provider and of this tour, which you can see right here in this link. And yeah, so the tour was kind of a fraud, but I really learned one very important lesson about survival there. And that lesson is that most of my, or many of my ideas about survival were really an illusion. They were really kind of, I had like this romantic dream that I really liked, this Robinson Crusoe dream. And yeah, so many of the things that I thought about survival are not actually true. They are an illusion. And this illusion is very much also supported and maintained through a lot of material, TV shows, YouTube channels, whatever. And I will also make a video about this for the people that are specifically interested in survival. You can check out my video here, The Truth About Survival. But yeah, so I had this illusion that you can get lost in the wilderness and then basically build yourself a great life there, a life that is maybe even greater than the life you have at home, where you work like 40 hours a week and you have all these difficult and unpleasant tasks to do. But if you got lost on this tropical island, then you would just be eating bananas and coconuts and fishing and just having a great life, which it's not true. And so it was an interesting experience on this tour to kind of see myself, to watch myself while this illusion was kind of falling apart for me. And it was in some way an unpleasant experience. Like I was kind of upset about it and frustrated and whatever. But at the same time, I was also glad to get rid of an illusion. And this whole experience also made me think about illusions in general. And I realized that illusions are very widespread in our society, and I think they are quite a prevalent drug, and that's why I think it's important to make this video here. And so in this video I want to talk about how illusions can be a kind of drug, what the real price of taking that drug is, how this drug is very prevalent in our society, how illusions can be used to manipulate and exploit people, how you can get off your illusions if you have some or guard against developing them, and finally, what could be a good alternative to using illusions in your life. How can you have a good life without using illusions? So yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. And a drug is actually quite a hard thing to define. And I work with the following definition: any form of abusing a biological pleasure mechanism by detaching it from its evolutionary purpose in order to get free pleasure is a drug. And I am aware that this definition is very broad, so it also encompasses many things that people today wouldn't describe as a drug, like for example contraception or artificial sugars or flavor enhancers or many things. But I still like this definition, and I feel like it is correct on a level that makes sense to me, because people also talk about how you can get addicted to almost anything. So you can get addicted to eating, you can get addicted to shopping, to working, to gambling, to sports. And I think this definition captures all of this. And so, yeah, so that's why I like it. Now, I wanted to quickly just say that I don't want to say that all drug use is always bad. So I think there is a limited scope for acceptable and maybe even beneficial drug use, though I don't want to encourage anyone to do stupid things. But I think it's very important to be conscious about what you're doing. So to be conscious that you are using a drug, which drug you are using and which ones you aren't, what's the dose, what's the frequency, and also to have reasonable limits that you don't overstep. And two of these reasonable limits that came to my mind, I'm not saying they are the only two, but I think they are really important, is number one, you shouldn't use a drug to compensate for a bad feeling that comes from another area of your life. Because if you have a bad feeling, that means that something isn't as it should be, that there is a problem, and you should face this problem and work to eliminate it. You shouldn't just compensate it by using a drug. And also, just to make it clear, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at doing this. So especially with this whole illusion video, I have realized that I have been using illusions as a drug quite for a long time in my life, let's put it that way. And so I'm also working to get rid of that. So I'm not saying that I do all of this perfect, but still I think you shouldn't do it. I don't think it's good for you. And the other point is that your drug use should not negatively affect any other area of your life. So as soon as you can't go out or have working social relationships anymore or do your job properly because of your drug use, then that's a clear sign that it is too much. Now, how can illusions be a drug? So if you are unhappy with your life, then one quick way to feel better is to just imagine that you have a better life. So you kind of pull back into some safe place and you dream about, if you had this life, then how would you feel? And the thing is, if you do that, you can actually feel an intimation of how you would feel if you had that life. And the reason why your body does that is in order to help you figure out what role you should take in life, who you could become, who you should become, and also what role you shouldn't take, because that's the one that would feel really bad in your imagination. So imagination is actually a really powerful tool and a really big evolutionary advantage, because it allows you to try out different roles like in a simulation in your head without actually having to put in the time, the energy, and also take the risk of trying this in the real world. So it's a really good thing, and the purpose of imagination is to figure out what you should do or who you should become in order to then go and do it. So the purpose in the end is to act. And if you detach your imagination from its biological purpose and you just use it as a trick to feel better, then you are using it as a drug. And if you are doing that, then chances are that you will want to maximize your positive feelings by maximizing how great this life is that you imagine. And so you will keep twerking it and making it better, tweaking it, I think is the right word, and making it better. And quite likely at some point you will start to imagine a life that you could have that actually isn't realistic. It's not realistically possible to have this life, but in order for the trick to function, you have to believe that it is actually possible, because else the whole idea doesn't work. And so that is where the illusion comes in. So the illusion is that you believe it would be possible to have this kind of life, which actually is unrealistic. It's not possible. And the thing is, with illusions, just like with other drugs, they can make you feel better in the moment, but you pay a heavy price down the road. And the price you pay for using an illusion as a drug is that your real life will always seem or be unsatisfactory compared to this unrealistic ideal that you dream about. And because it's unrealistic, you can also never reach it, so you can never actually be satisfied. And so that's the problem. And I think really I came to think when I was putting this article together in my mind that illusions are a very widespread drug basically in our society. And I think the reason for that is that it has become so easy to generate and spread material like images, videos, games that they seem very realistically, but they are not a direct copy of reality. They are fabricated and put together in order to generate a entire picture, which is then not an accurate representation of reality. And there is not necessarily a trouble with doing that as long as you are conscious about it. But the thing is that these things can easily be mistaken for reality. And I think that everyone has a couple of illusions that are really tempting to him. And the thing is, you can find material for any illusion on the internet, because the internet is so big, there are so many people that use it, that even if your illusion is not very widespread at all, there are enough people that share this illusion that there is a market for producing material for it. And also a point that I wanted to make is I don't think that this is like a malicious conspiracy by all the people producing images or videos trying to get you hooked on some drug or something. I think it's just basically the internet is a huge market, or maybe even just everyday life is like a market for attention. So everybody tries to get your attention, but the internet makes this market global. And so there is like a super strong competition for everyone's attention. And the competition is not only all the other people on the internet today, but it's all the material that has ever been produced until now, because it's all there, you can all find it. So it keeps getting more and more difficult to compete. And so you have to spice it up. You have to make your product even greater. You have to kind of spice it up. And so the trend probably just goes towards selling things that look better and better, because that's what can separate you from, or that's one thing that can separate you from the rest. I try to speak the truth as well as I can, and hopefully people that are interested in finding the truth may find something of this useful. Yeah, I kind of got lost on a tangent a bit, but I don't think it's malicious. I just think it's a product of this global market for attention. And so I want to quickly go over a couple of examples that came to my mind. Examples of such internet-fed illusions. And I also would be interested in what examples came to your mind while you were watching this video so far. So one example is, of course, porn. And porn basically produces the illusion that you can have any woman, any hot woman or ugly woman that you want, just anyone, whenever you want her. So you are like, basically in reproductive sense, you are the alpha male. You are the guy that can have any woman that he wants. And then there is this thing I call woman's porn, which is the illusion that you are, for some reason, innately special, like you're just born with it. And because you are so special, the richest and most powerful and attractive guy of the entire society is completely obsessed with you, and he does nothing else but court you and read every wish off your lip, and he doesn't even see that other women exist because he only wants you. And so this is like a popular illusion too. Then there is like action movies, like the illusion that you can be a really powerful fighter and take on 10 people at once. There is social media, there is the whole beauty and fitness industry. There is the illusion of perfect love, which I think is also very widespread. And it's the illusion that you could have, if you were with the right person, then you could have this perfect relationship that is always fun and joy and happiness, and never annoying or difficult or troublesome. And also the whole glamour thing, like this idea that just every ordinary guy has like a huge house with a swimming pool and huge cars, and just everybody is basically young and rich and beautiful and doesn't do that much for it. So these are kind of the ones that came to my mind. And yeah, the purpose of all of this is to make money. So illusions, just like other drugs, can be used to make money from people. And first of all, people will often pay for material that feeds their illusion, but it goes even further, because if you have such an illusion and you are kind of dependent on it, then that means you have something that isn't true, but you really want it to be true. And because of that, you start to ignore information that would tell you it isn't true, and you start inventing reasons why unrelated facts mean that it actually is true. And so you can't really perceive reality correctly when it comes to your specific illusion. And this is a kind of weakness which can then be used to sell you bad products for a high price. So this was, for example, also the case with my survival trip. So yeah, because there were more than one sign that something isn't so good before I booked the trip, and I even noticed some of them. But like the major one was that this guy wanted to change the price after we had already agreed on it. But I suppressed my initial bad feeling and kind of went forward with it because it was like, because I really wanted it. And I think the reason why I wanted it so much was because I had this exaggerated illusion. And so yeah, I continued and booked it, and then I got ripped off. But maybe it was also a good thing in the end. I don't know. Maybe it was worth getting rid of the illusion, but still it was a fraud. And so yeah. But that's the thing. If you have illusions, then you have a weakness because you don't perceive reality clearly. And this weakness can then be exploited to manipulate you, to cheat you, to defraud you, whatever. And I also started to think while putting together this article that if you don't have any illusions, if you always see reality as clearly as you can, which is not perfect, but as clearly as you can, then it would be probably really hard to manipulate or cheat you. And that is because it's not really possible to fake reality perfectly. So there should always be signs that something isn't right, but you have to be willing to perceive them and to take them seriously. And that's, I think, an important point. Now, how can you get off your illusions or guard against developing them? And I think the only way that I could come up with is to do things in reality, to actually do them. Because when you do something yourself, then you find out very quickly if you have an illusion there or not. And if you do, then the experience will likely be very frustrating and very annoying, and it will make you feel uncomfortable, and that's because it's a bit of cold withdrawal. It's basically your illusion gets taken away from you, and you start to wake up and you start to realize, this is not as great at all as I imagined it to be. And so while this is uncomfortable in the moment, I think it's really important and it's really beneficial for you because you recalibrate your expectations to match reality. And then you get rid of this unrealistic standard that you use to compare your life to. And so that means that you can be actually happier with your real life because you no longer compare it to an unrealistic standard, or at least one less. So yeah, and also if you keep doing things in reality, then you get good at them. And that leads us to the last point of this video, which is the alternative. And the alternative to using illusions or drugs in life is to be successful in real life and to actually do things that make your life better. And every time you succeed at something, it makes you feel good. And you feel good when you get one step closer to a goal, and you also feel good when you reach it. And that is actually the exact biological purpose of positive emotion. It is to make you do stuff that is evolutionarily advantageous to you. Now, I have to put in a quick caveat. I'm not saying that everything that feels good is good and you should do it, even without the whole drug issue, because maybe for some people raping or stealing or murdering feels really good, but that doesn't mean you should do it, because there is this whole ethical consideration living in a society. But still, if you do things that are actually good for you, then you will feel good. And these good feelings are there for a valid reason, because you are actually doing something that is good for you. And so you have good feelings for a valid reason, and then you don't need drugs or illusions anymore. And so, yeah, I hope this makes some sense. These are my thoughts on the whole illusion topic. Please let me know what you think of this, if you found it useful or interesting, and I hope to see you on another video sometime. So take care. Bye.